Steve Foley was a standout linebacker in the NFL, born in 1975 and drafted in 1998 by the Cincinnati Bengals. After stints with the Bengals and the Houston Texans, he joined the San Diego Chargers in 2004, quickly becoming a defensive cornerstone. By 2006, at 30 years old, he was one of the Chargers' most reliable playmakers, feared for his ability to pressure quarterbacks and control the field. But in the early hours of September 3, 2006, Foley's career came to a sudden end. While driving near his home in Poway, California, he was followed by off-duty Coronado police officer Aaron Mansker, who suspected him of drunk driving. The pursuit ended in a confrontation outside Foley's house. When Foley exited his vehicle, the situation escalated. Mansker fired multiple shots, striking Foley in the hand, thigh, and hip. The injuries were severe enough to sideline Foley for the entire 2006 season, and he never returned to the NFL. His promising career was effectively ended in that instant. The aftermath was complicated. Foley was charged with a misdemeanor DUI and placed on probation, while his passenger faced assault and DUI charges. Mansker was cleared of criminal wrongdoing, with investigators ruling the shooting an act of self-defense. Years later, Foley filed a civil suit and reached a multi-million-dollar settlement with the city of Coronado. For fans and teammates, it was a shocking loss. One of the Chargers' key defenders removed not by injury on the field, but by gunfire off it. The incident remains one of the most dramatic and tragic turning points in modern NFL history. Keith Davis. On July 16, 2006, Dallas Cowboys defensive back Keith Davis was driving along a Dallas interstate when his car was sprayed with gunfire. 2 bullets struck him, one in the head, another in the right thigh. He somehow managed to drive himself to Baylor University Medical Center, where doctors treated his wounds. By the following day, he was released from the hospital, and police suggested the attack may have been a botched carjacking or possibly road rage. For Davis, the shooting was not his first brush with gun violence. Just 3 years earlier, in 2003, he had been wounded in the hip and elbow in a separate incident. Yet each time he returned to the field with determination. Originally undrafted in 2002 out of Sam Houston State, Davis carved out his role with the Cowboys through grit and relentless play on special teams. By 2005, he had earned a starting safety position, proving himself as one of the defense's toughest competitors. The 2006 shooting could have ended his career or even his life. Instead, Davis recovered quickly, undergoing surgery to remove bullet fragments before reporting back to the team. That fall, he didn't miss a single game, suiting up for all 16 contests and continuing to anchor the Cowboys' special teams. The investigation into the shooting never produced clear answers. Police searched for a white pickup truck spotted near the scene, but no suspect was ever charged. Davis himself altered details in his statements about where he had been that night, leaving lingering questions. What remained certain, however, was his resilience. Keith Davis turned a near-fatal moment on a Dallas highway into yet another testament to his toughness. Jerome McDougle. On the night of July 28, 2005, in Miami, Philadelphia Eagles defensive end Jerome McDougle was caught in a terrifying brush with death. A former first-round draft pick, McDougle had built his reputation at the University of Miami, where he starred on the 2001 national championship team before being selected 15th overall in the 2003 NFL Draft. By 2005, he was expected to step into a bigger role for an Eagles squad fresh off a Super Bowl appearance. But just before training camp, his career and life were thrown into chaos. While sitting in his car outside his Miami home, McDougle was confronted by 3 armed men. The attackers demanded his valuables, including a luxury watch. In the struggle, shots rang out. McDougle was struck in the abdomen, while 2 other bullets ripped into his car door. He was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital's Ryder Trauma Center, where doctors fought to stabilize him. Though his condition improved and he was eventually able to walk and speak with the police, the injuries forced him to miss the entire 2005 season. The police investigation quickly led to arrests. 4 teenagers, ranging from 15 to 19 years old, were charged with robbery and attempted felony murder. Authorities confirmed the attack was a violent robbery attempt, not a targeted incident, and McDougle had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Despite the ordeal, McDougle returned to the field in 2006, determined to reclaim his spot with the Eagles. He never fully reached the potential once projected for him, but his story remains a powerful reminder of how violence off the field can derail a career in an instant, and how resilience can carry a player back from the edge of tragedy. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'll greatly appreciate it if you could show support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much. Terrence Kiel. On July 4, 2003, in Houston, Texas, just months after being drafted by the San Diego Chargers, rookie defensive back Terrence Kiel found himself fighting for his life. Outside a Houston mall during what police described as an attempted carjacking, Kiel was gunned down. He was struck 3 times, once in the ankle, once in the knee, and once in the abdomen. For a moment, his football future seemed to hang in the balance. Kiel had arrived in the NFL with high expectations. A standout safety at Texas A&M, he was taken in the 2nd round to strengthen the Chargers' secondary. Known for his speed and physical play, he was poised to make an immediate impact in San Diego. But before he ever played a down, tragedy nearly derailed it all. Doctors confirmed none of the wounds were life-threatening, and after weeks of recovery, Kiel's resilience was undeniable. By the end of the season, he had defied the odds, returning to the field and starting 7 games as a rookie, showing the toughness that defined his short but memorable NFL career. As for the shooting, investigators determined it was tied to an attempted carjacking, but no suspects were immediately brought to justice. What remained was the story of a young player whose career began not with glory, but with survival, and a reminder of the dangers NFL stars can face beyond the game. Joey Porter. On the night of August 31, 2003, violence erupted outside the All Sports Bar and Grill in Denver. Gunfire broke out in the parking lot, leaving 6 people wounded and 1 man dead. Among those caught in the chaos was Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker Joey Porter, who was struck by a bullet in his left buttock. At the time, Porter was already a cornerstone of the Steelers' defense. Drafted in the 3rd round of the 1999 NFL Draft out of Colorado State, he had built a reputation as one of the league's fiercest pass rushers. By 2003, he was a Pro Bowl linebacker known for his intensity, leadership, and game-changing plays. The shooting could have derailed his season, or even his career. Initially listed in serious condition, Porter was hospitalized, and doctors confirmed the wound was not life-threatening. Remarkably, he recovered quickly, missing only 2 games before returning to play in 14 contests that season, finishing with 65 tackles and 5 sacks. His resilience earned respect across the league. Investigators determined that Porter was not targeted. Police believed the shooting stemmed from gang-related tensions at the bar, and Porter was simply an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. The man killed in the shooting had a history of gang activity, and authorities later identified the gunman responsible. For Joey Porter, the incident was a sobering reminder of how quickly life can change. Yet he returned stronger, going on to win a Super Bowl with the Steelers, earn multiple Pro Bowl selections, and cement his place as one of the most feared linebackers of his era. His comeback from that Denver shooting became part of the legend of his toughness both on and off the field. Darrent Williams. On January 1, 2007, tragedy struck the NFL. Just hours into the new year, Denver Broncos cornerback Darrent Williams was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting in downtown Denver. He was only 24 years old. Williams had been drafted in the 2nd round of the 2005 NFL Draft out of Oklahoma State. In just 2 seasons, he quickly rose as a starter for the Broncos, known for his speed, energy, and big play ability on defense and special teams. His future in the league looked bright. But that night, after leaving a nightclub with teammates and friends, Williams stepped into a rented limousine. Moments later, another vehicle pulled alongside. A burst of gunfire tore through the night. The limousine was sprayed with bullets, and Williams was struck in the neck. He died before reaching the hospital. The shooting stunned the Broncos and the wider NFL community. What should have been a night of celebration turned into a moment of national mourning for a young star gone too soon. Investigators later connected the shooting to a dispute inside the nightclub earlier that evening. In 2010, Willie D. Clark, a known gang member, was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus more than 1,000 additional years for related charges. Darrent Williams' death left a void in Denver and across the NFL. Shane Curry. On the night of May 3, 1992, tragedy struck in Cincinnati. Shane Curry, a 23-year-old defensive end for the Indianapolis Colts, was shot in the head outside the Armada Inn nightclub after a dispute over a blocked car. Just 1 year into his NFL career, his life and promising future were suddenly cut short. Curry's journey had been marked by determination and talent. A Cincinnati native, he first played college football at Georgia Tech before transferring to the University of Miami, where he became a standout on the defensive line. His strength and speed made him a force, and in the 1991 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts selected him in the second round. As a rookie, he showed flashes of potential, laying the foundation for what many believed would be a long and impactful career. But in the early hours of that May morning, everything ended. After leaving the club, Curry encountered a car blocking traffic. Words were exchanged, tensions rose, and a 15-year-old boy named Artis Anderson pulled a gun. A single shot struck Curry in the head. He was rushed to the hospital but could not be saved. The investigation quickly identified Anderson as the shooter. Tried as an adult, he was convicted of murder and given a sentence of 15 years to life, plus an additional 3 years for a weapons charge. For the Colts and for Curry's hometown of Cincinnati, his death was a sobering reminder of how a moment of violence can steal away not just a career, but a life filled with promise. Fred Lane. On July 6, 2000 in Charlotte, North Carolina, the NFL lost one of its rising stars when Carolina Panthers running back Fred Lane was shot and killed inside his own home. He was just 24 years old. A promising career ended in an instant. Lane's path to the league was defined by resilience. Undrafted out of Tiny Lane College in 1997, he forced his way onto the Panthers roster with sheer determination. As a rookie, he led the team in rushing, broke multiple franchise records, and stunned Atlanta with a 147-yard performance that announced his arrival. Over 3 seasons, he piled up more than 2,000 rushing yards, becoming one of Carolina's most reliable backs. But on that July night, as Lane stepped through the door, his wife, Deidre, pulled the trigger. He was shot once in the chest and again in the back of the head. The shocking crime stunned teammates and fans, leaving the football world grappling with the brutal reality behind the headlines. Investigators uncovered a marriage plagued by conflict. Prosecutors painted Deidre as calculating, suggesting financial motives tied to life insurance. She initially faced a murder charge, but in 2003, she accepted a plea deal admitting to voluntary manslaughter. She was sentenced to nearly 8 years in prison, with credit for time already served. Richard Collier. On September 2, 2008, in Jacksonville, Florida, Jaguars offensive tackle Richard Collier sat in a Cadillac Escalade outside an apartment complex after a night out with a teammate. Without warning, a gunman opened fire, hitting Collier 14 times. The attack left him paralyzed from the waist down, and doctors were forced to amputate his left leg after complications. Collier's journey to the NFL had been anything but easy. A standout at Valdosta State, he went undrafted in 2006 before signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Through sheer persistence, he earned a spot on the roster and became known as a reliable, hard-working presence on the offensive line. By 2008, his career was still young, but his future looked promising. That future vanished in seconds. The shooting not only ended his NFL career, but also changed the course of his life forever. His teammates and the league were left stunned by the violence, rallying around him as he began the long and painful road to recovery. Investigators soon discovered the shooting wasn't random. The gunman, Tyrone Hartsfield, had a prior altercation with Collier months earlier at a nightclub. Prosecutors argued the attack was an act of revenge. In 2009, Hartsfield was convicted of attempted first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, though years later his sentence was reduced to 27 years. For Richard Collier, survival became his defining moment. From the hospital bed to life in a wheelchair, he embraced resilience, later becoming a motivational speaker. Plaxico Burress. On November 28, 2008, in Manhattan, New York, inside the Latin Quarter nightclub, the career of Giants wide receiver Plaxico Burress took a dramatic turn. Just months earlier, he was celebrated as a Super Bowl hero, the man who caught the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 42 to defeat the undefeated New England Patriots. Burress's career had been built on big plays. Drafted 8th overall by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2000, he became known as a dominant deep threat. But it was with the New York Giants that he reached his peak, his name etched in NFL history for that unforgettable Super Bowl catch. Then came the night in Manhattan. Burress entered the club carrying an unlicensed handgun tucked into his waistband. When the weapon slipped, he tried to grab it. The gun discharged, sending a bullet into his right thigh. The wound wasn't life-threatening, but the damage to his career was immediate. The Giants suspended him for the rest of the season, and he was placed on the reserve list. Days later, Burress turned himself in to the police. New York's strict gun laws left little room for leniency. He faced criminal possession charges, and in 2009, he accepted a plea deal, 2 years in prison with 2 years of supervised release. He served nearly 20 months before walking free in 2011. The Giants released him in 2009, and though he briefly returned to the NFL with the Jets, he never regained his former glory. One accidental gunshot in a nightclub ended the prime of a career that had once stood at the very top of the football world. Stedman Bailey. On the night of November 24, 2015, Stedman Bailey, wide receiver for the St. Louis Rams, was sitting in a car outside a home in Miami Gardens, Florida. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. More than 30 rounds were sprayed into the vehicle. Bailey was struck twice in the head, while his cousin, Antoine Reeves, was hit multiple times, shielding 2 young children in the back seat. Miraculously, both Bailey and the children survived, though his injuries were life-threatening. Bailey's journey to that moment had been filled with promise. A standout at West Virginia University, he set school records with over 3,000 receiving yards and 41 touchdowns. The Rams drafted him in the 3rd round of the 2013 NFL Draft, and he quickly made his mark as a dependable target, hauling in nearly 60 catches and showing flashes of becoming a long-term playmaker. The shooting, however, changed everything. Surgeons removed bullet fragments and placed a metal plate in his skull. Though Bailey fought through a grueling recovery, doctors warned his football career was likely over. His determination never wavered. He even attempted an NFL comeback, but the violence had effectively ended his time on the field. The investigation brought little closure. No arrests were made, no suspects named, and the motive behind the ambush remains a mystery to this day. Bailey instead found a new purpose. He turned to coaching and mentoring and became a vocal advocate against gun violence, calling himself a walking miracle. Steve McNair. On July 4, 2009, downtown Nashville became the scene of tragedy. Former NFL quarterback Steve McNair, just 2 years into retirement, was found dead inside a condominium. He had been shot multiple times, twice in the chest and twice in the head. Beside him lay his 20-year-old girlfriend, Sahel Jenny Kazemi, killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. Police would later rule it a murder-suicide. Steve McNair's career had made him one of the most respected quarterbacks of his generation. Drafted 3rd overall in 1995 by the Houston Oilers, he guided the franchise through its move to Tennessee, where he became the face of the Titans. Known as Air McNair, his grit and toughness defined him. In 2000, he led the Titans to Super Bowl 34, falling just 1 yard short of victory in one of the most dramatic finishes in league history. By 2003, he was named NFL co-MVP, further cementing his legacy. He finished his career with the Baltimore Ravens before retiring in 2008. But off the field, McNair's life was far more complicated. Investigators revealed that Kazemi, struggling with debt and growing jealous about the relationship, had recently purchased the handgun used in the crime. Gunpowder residue was found on her hand, and the weapon was discovered beneath her body. Authorities concluded she had shot McNair before turning the gun on herself. The football world was left stunned. Teammates and fans mourned the loss of a man remembered for his toughness, leadership, and heart. The Titans honored him with a public memorial, and his former teammates wore his number 9 throughout the season. Yet questions still lingered about the investigation, about Kazemi's state of mind, and about the private struggles of a player once seen as unshakable, Sean Taylor. On November 26, 2007, in Palmetto Bay, Florida, Washington Redskins safety Sean Taylor was at home with his girlfriend and young daughter when intruders broke in. As Taylor confronted them, he was shot in the upper leg, the bullet severing his femoral artery. He was rushed to Jackson Memorial Hospital, but by the following day, the NFL had lost one of its brightest young stars. Taylor was just 24 years old. Drafted 5th overall in the 2004 NFL Draft, he quickly became known as one of the league's most feared defenders. A hard-hitting safety with rare instincts, he earned a Pro Bowl selection in 2006 and was on track to become one of the greatest at his position. His physical style and game-changing presence electrified fans and terrified opponents. The shooting sent shockwaves through the league. Teammates and fans mourned a life and career cut short, while tributes poured in across the NFL. But as the grief spread, investigators moved quickly. Within days, 4 suspects from Fort Myers, Florida, were arrested, later joined by a 5th. Prosecutors charged them with murder and armed burglary. Eric Rivera Jr., just 17 at the time of the crime, was identified as the gunman. After years of court delays, he was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced in 2014 to 57.5 years in prison. His accomplices also received lengthy sentences, ensuring all involved were held accountable. Sean Taylor's death remains one of the most tragic moments in NFL history. A generational talent, gone too soon, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance and the haunting question of what might have been. Chris Johnson. On March 8, 2015, in Orlando, Florida, former NFL running back Chris Johnson, better known as CJ2K, was stopped at a red light when gunfire tore through his Jeep in a drive-by shooting. Johnson was hit in the shoulder. The driver, his friend Drekius Orico Johnson, was killed instantly, and another passenger was injured. Chris Johnson's rise to stardom began when the Tennessee Titans drafted him in the first round of the 2008 NFL Draft. That same year, he became Rookie of the Year, and in 2009, he rushed for over 2,000 yards, a feat that placed him among the elite backs in NFL history. His blistering 4.24-second 40-yard dash at the Combine had earned him the nickname CJ2K. After 6 seasons in Tennessee, he joined the New York Jets in 2014, looking for a resurgence. But that Orlando morning threatened to end his career. Johnson survived the shooting and was released from the hospital in stable condition, but the tragedy left a permanent scar. Later that year, he signed with the Arizona Cardinals, showing flashes of his old explosiveness, yet never fully regaining the dominance that once defined him. The investigation into the shooting was launched as a homicide case, but no immediate arrests were made. Authorities described it as a targeted drive-by, though Johnson denied being the intended victim. The case stalled, leaving unanswered questions and lingering shadows. Aldon Smith. On June 29, 2012, deep in the hills of San Jose, California, a house party hosted by San Francisco 49ers linebacker Aldon Smith erupted into violence. What began as a gathering quickly spiraled out of control when uninvited guests arrived. Shots rang out, 2 people were wounded, and Smith himself was stabbed in the chaos. At the time, Smith was one of the NFL's most promising young stars. Drafted 7th overall in 2011, he burst onto the scene with 14 sacks as a rookie and followed it with an All-Pro season in 2012, cementing his reputation as one of the league's most dangerous pass rushers. But that summer night would begin to tarnish his meteoric rise. According to investigators, Smith fired a handgun from his balcony in an attempt to break up the confrontation. When the gunfire ceased, deputies searching his home discovered multiple assault-style rifles, illegal under California law. The discovery led to 3 felony weapons charges filed against him in October 2013. Smith initially pleaded not guilty, but by May 2014, he changed his plea to no contest. A judge later reduced the charges to misdemeanors, sentencing him to 12 days in county jail, 3 years of probation, a $2,000 fine, and over 200 hours of community service. A civil lawsuit from a wounded guest only deepened the fallout. The incident marked the start of a troubling pattern for Smith, off-field chaos overshadowing his dominance on the field. What could have been a Hall of Fame career instead became a warning story of how quickly promise can be undone. Aqib Talib. In the early hours of June 5, 2016, news broke out of Dallas that Denver Broncos cornerback Aqib Talib had been shot. Fresh off a Super Bowl 50 victory, Talib was one of the NFL's most feared defenders, yet now he was lying in a hospital bed with a bullet wound in his right leg. Talib's journey to that point was as turbulent as it was brilliant. Drafted in the first round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2008, he quickly earned a reputation as a lockdown corner with a fiery edge. After a stint with the New England Patriots, he joined the Denver Broncos in 2014, becoming a centerpiece of their no-fly zone secondary. His aggressive style and playmaking ability earned him multiple Pro Bowl selections and a championship ring in February 2016. But controversy had always followed him. In 2011, he was charged in Texas with aggravated assault after allegedly firing at his sister's boyfriend, a case that was dropped the following year due to lack of evidence. The 2016 shooting added another chapter to that complicated legacy. Initial reports suggested Talib had been caught in a nightclub shooting. But as Dallas police investigated, the story shifted. Medical reports confirmed the bullet entered the back of his thigh and exited through his calf. Talib himself later admitted he had accidentally shot himself, though he claimed he couldn't remember the exact details because he'd been too intoxicated. The incident forced him to miss the Broncos' White House visit to celebrate their Super Bowl win, and he sat out part of training camp. Yet, remarkably, he returned that season to help anchor Denver's defense and was named to another Pro Bowl. Police ultimately declined to press charges, closing the case. Jovan Belcher. On the morning of December 1, 2012, in Kansas City, Missouri, tragedy struck the NFL. Linebacker Jovan Belcher, just 25 years old, fatally shot his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, before driving to the Chiefs' practice facility and taking his own life. Belcher's path to the league was unlikely. Coming out of the University of Maine, he went undrafted in 2009, yet his determination earned him a place with the Kansas City Chiefs. By 2010, he had worked his way into the starting lineup, and in 2011, he delivered his strongest season, recording 61 tackles and cementing his reputation as a tough, reliable defender. But away from the field, personal turmoil was building. In the early hours of that December morning, Belcher and Perkins, parents of a 3-month-old daughter, argued at their home. Just before 8 a.m., Belcher shot Perkins multiple times while his mother, who was staying with them, attempted to intervene. Perkins was rushed to the hospital but could not be saved. Belcher then drove to Arrowhead Stadium. In the parking lot, he encountered Chiefs officials, including General Manager Scott Pioli and head coach Romeo Crennel. Witnesses said he thanked them for their support, urged them to take care of his daughter, and then walked a few steps away before shooting himself. Investigators confirmed it was a murder-suicide. The autopsy revealed Belcher's blood alcohol content was more than twice the legal limit, and that Perkins had been shot 9 times. In the years that followed, doctors examining Belcher's brain found signs consistent with CTE. The incident shocked the NFL and sparked urgent discussions about mental health, domestic violence, and the hidden costs of the game, leaving one of the darkest marks in league history. Will Smith. On April 9, 2016, in New Orleans, former Saints defensive end Will Smith, a hero in the city's football history, was shot and killed after a late-night traffic incident in the Lower Garden District. He was just 34 years old, and the shocking loss rippled across the NFL and the community he once carried to glory. Smith's career had been defined by loyalty and dominance. Drafted in the first round by the New Orleans Saints in 2004, he played his entire 9-year NFL career with the team. A relentless pass rusher, he earned a Pro Bowl selection in 2006 and became a cornerstone of the defense that brought New Orleans its first Super Bowl title in 2009. For fans, he was more than a player. He was part of the Saints' identity. But that April night turned tragic. After a minor traffic collision escalated into a heated confrontation, local businessman Cardell Hayes opened fire. Smith was struck multiple times and died at the scene. His wife Raquel was also shot, but survived. The city mourned, struggling to make sense of how a fender bender had ended the life of a Super Bowl champion. The courtroom battle stretched for years. Hayes was first convicted of manslaughter in 2016, but his verdict was later overturned after the Supreme Court struck down non-unanimous jury decisions in Louisiana. In January 2024, a retrial brought the case back to the spotlight. Once again, Hayes was found guilty of manslaughter, though acquitted of attempted manslaughter for the shooting of Raquel. That April, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with later adjustments granting credit for time served under home incarceration. Will Smith's death remains one of the NFL's darkest off-field tragedies. His legacy in New Orleans lives on as a champion and leader, Joe McKnight. On December 1, 2016, In Terrytown, Louisiana, former NFL running back Joe McKnight was shot and killed during a road rage encounter that stunned the football world. He was only 28 years old. McKnight's career had begun with extraordinary promise. A star at USC, he was drafted in the 4th round of the 2010 NFL Draft by the New York Jets. Known for his explosive speed and versatility, he quickly made an impact as a kick returner, even leading the league in kickoff return average in 2011. After 3 seasons with the Jets, he had a brief stint with the Kansas City Chiefs and later continued his playing days in the Canadian Football League, where he was still fighting to revive his career. But that afternoon in Louisiana, a traffic dispute spiraled into tragedy. At an intersection, McKnight and 54-year-old Ronald Gasser exchanged words. Witnesses reported that McKnight never left his vehicle before Gasser pulled a gun and fired 3 shots, ending his life on the spot. The case dragged on for years. In 2018, Gasser was convicted of manslaughter by a 10-2 jury and sentenced to 30 years in prison. But after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down non-unanimous jury verdicts in 2020, the conviction was overturned. By 2022, Louisiana's Supreme Court ruled he could not be retried for murder, and Gasser later pleaded guilty to manslaughter, receiving a 10-year sentence. In 2024, after serving less than 8 years, he was released from prison. For many, the outcome left a bitter sense of unfinished justice. Joe McKnight's legacy remains that of a gifted athlete whose life and career were cut short not on the field, but at a roadside in Louisiana. Phillip Adams. On April 7, 2021, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, a quiet neighborhood turned into the scene of one of the most shocking tragedies involving a former NFL player. Phillip Adams, once a cornerback in the league, opened fire at the home of Dr. Robert Leslie, killing 6 people, including the doctor, his wife Barbara, their 2 young grandchildren, and 2 repairmen working outside. Hours later, Adams was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Adams's football journey had begun with promise. Born and raised in Rock Hill, he starred at South Carolina State before being drafted in the 7th round of the 2010 NFL Draft by the San Francisco 49ers. Over the next 6 years, he played for 6 different teams: the 49ers, Patriots, Seahawks, Raiders, Jets, and Falcons, filling roles as a cornerback and special teams player. But his career was marred by injuries, including multiple concussions that would eventually cast a long shadow over his life. The Rock Hill shooting stunned the community and the nation. Friends and neighbors struggled to comprehend how a former professional athlete, known locally for his quiet demeanor, could commit such devastation. Investigators found no clear motive, but the tragedy reignited urgent conversations about football, brain injuries, and mental health. Months later, answers began to emerge. An autopsy revealed Adams had severe stage 2 CTE. Doctors noted extensive damage to his frontal lobes, injuries often linked to impulsivity, aggression, and cognitive decline. The discovery cast new light on his violent actions and placed his case among the growing list of NFL players whose lives ended in connection to CTE. Reche Caldwell. On June 6, 2020, in Tampa, Florida, former NFL wide receiver Reche Caldwell was preparing for a night out when his life came to a sudden and violent end. At just 41 years old, he was ambushed outside his home and shot multiple times in what police described as a targeted robbery. He was rushed to the hospital, but did not survive. Caldwell's football journey had begun at the University of Florida, where he became one of the Gators' top receivers under Steve Spurrier. His college success carried him to the 2002 NFL Draft, where the San Diego Chargers selected him in the 2nd round. Over 6 seasons, he played for the Chargers, the New England Patriots, and the Washington Redskins. His most memorable year came in New England in 2006, where he led the team in receptions and receiving yards, helping Tom Brady and the Patriots reach the AFC Championship game. Life after football proved more turbulent. Caldwell faced legal challenges, including a 2014 federal prison sentence for drug distribution, and in 2020, he pleaded guilty to healthcare fraud. He was scheduled to be sentenced just days after his death. Still, those close to him said he was working to turn things around. On that June night, as he stepped outside to grab a jacket before a date, assailants jumped from hiding. According to his girlfriend, the attackers ambushed him before opening fire. His mother later said she believed he had been set up. The NFL community was stunned. Teammates remembered Caldwell not for his struggles, but for his humor, his energy, and his ever-present smile. Brian Robinson Jr. On August 28, 2022, in Washington, D.C., just weeks before his rookie season was set to begin, Brian Robinson Jr., a 23-year-old running back freshly drafted by the Washington Commanders, was ambushed in an attempted robbery and carjacking. He was shot twice, once in the glute and once in the knee, and rushed to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. For many players, that could have been the end before the beginning. Robinson had just completed a 5-year journey at Alabama, where he patiently waited behind future NFL stars before finally seizing his chance as a senior. His breakout season, capped with over 1,300 rushing yards and a national championship appearance, made him a third-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. Washington saw him as a cornerstone of their backfield, a young star ready to make an immediate impact. The shooting left the football world stunned, but within days, doctors confirmed there was no ligament or bone damage. Robinson's determination became clear almost immediately. Just 6 weeks later, on October 9, 2022, he ran onto the field for his NFL debut against the Tennessee Titans. The crowd rose to its feet as he carried the ball 9 times that afternoon, a moment less about yards gained and more about survival and resilience. Police later arrested 2 teenagers, ages 15 and 17, in connection with the attempted robbery. Both were charged, and by the following year, each received multi-year sentences under juvenile custody. What could have been a tragic end became one of the most inspirational comebacks in NFL history. Brian Robinson Jr. not only survived 2 gunshots, but returned to the game he loved, proving that even in the face of violence, his story was only just beginning. Corey Ballentine. On April 27, 2019, in Topeka, Kansas, just hours after living his NFL dream, Corey Ballentine's life would be changed forever. Drafted in the 6th round by the New York Giants, the Washburn University cornerback had overcome the odds, rising from Division II football to the national stage. That night, he celebrated with friends and teammates. But by dawn, the celebration had turned into a nightmare. At around 1 a.m., Ballentine and teammate Dwayne Simmons were outside a party when a car approached. Words were exchanged, the vehicle drove off, then suddenly circled back. Without warning, gunfire erupted. Simmons, just 23 years old, was killed instantly. Ballentine was struck in the hip as he tried to flee, collapsing on the pavement. The city that had cheered their triumph hours earlier now woke to shock and grief. Investigators quickly tied the shooting to Francisco "Frankie" Mendez, who had been involved in a series of violent robberies that same night. In 2022, a Kansas jury convicted him of first-degree murder, multiple counts of attempted murder, and aggravated robbery. The evidence showed he didn't act in the heat of the moment. Witnesses testified that he paused, turned the car around, and fired after waiting up to 15 seconds, enough time for the law to call it premeditated. In November 2024, the Kansas Supreme Court upheld nearly all of those convictions, including the murder of Simmons and the attempted murder of Ballentine, though some lesser robbery counts were overturned. Justice was affirmed, but the loss remained permanent. For Corey Ballentine, survival was only the beginning. He recovered, took the field in the NFL, and continued his career. Yet the night meant to mark his rise will always be remembered for its devastating cost. The life of his best friend, stolen just as both futures were about to begin. Aaron Hernandez. On June 17, 2013, in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, a body was discovered in an industrial park less than a mile from the home of New England Patriots tight end Aaron Hernandez. The victim was 27-year-old Odin Lloyd, a semi-professional football player and acquaintance of Hernandez. What began as a routine homicide case would soon expose one of the NFL's brightest stars as its central suspect. Aaron Hernandez had risen quickly in the league. Drafted in the 4th round of the 2010 NFL Draft out of Florida, he became a key piece of the Patriots' offense. Teaming with Rob Gronkowski, he helped redefine the tight end position. His talent earned him a 5-year, $40 million contract extension in 2012. Seemingly securing a long future in New England. But behind the success, darker troubles were unfolding. Investigators tied Hernandez to Lloyd's murder through surveillance footage, cell phone records, and the discovery of a rental car registered in his name at the crime scene. On June 26, 2013, he was arrested, and within 90 minutes, the Patriots released him from the team. The trial that followed captivated the nation. In April 2015, Hernandez was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 2 years later, in April 2017, he was found dead in his prison cell, ruled a suicide. For a brief period, Massachusetts law vacated his conviction, but in 2019, the state's highest court reinstated it, closing one of the darkest chapters in NFL history. Aaron Hernandez's story remains a disappointing tale of wasted potential, an athlete who went from a $40 million contract and NFL stardom to a life sentence, his legacy defined not by touchdowns, but by tragedy and violence. Rae Carruth was once considered a rising star in the NFL. Drafted 27th overall in the first round of the 1997 NFL Draft, the wide receiver joined the Carolina Panthers after a standout college career at Colorado, where he was an All-American in 1996. His rookie season was promising, earning him a spot on the PFWA All-Rookie team. But just 2 years later, his football career and his life spiraled into infamy. On November 16, 1999, in Charlotte, North Carolina, Carruth's girlfriend, Reche Adams, 8 months pregnant with his child, was ambushed while driving behind his vehicle. Another car pulled alongside hers, and she was shot 4 times. Gravely injured, Adams managed to call 911, telling police that Carruth had stopped in front of her, effectively setting her up for the attack. She fell into a coma, but doctors performed an emergency C-section, delivering her son, Chancellor Lee. He survived but suffered permanent brain damage and was later diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Adams never recovered, passing away in December 1999. Investigators revealed that Carruth had conspired with 2 men, Van Brett Watkins, the gunman, and Michael Kennedy, the driver, to carry out the shooting. In 2001, Carruth was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle, and using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. He was acquitted of first-degree murder but sentenced to nearly 19 years in prison. On October 22, 2018, Rae Carruth was released. His son, Chancellor, continues to live with severe disabilities under the care of his grandmother, Sandra Adams. Carruth's name remains a reminder of one of the darkest chapters in NFL history, a story not of athletic triumph, but of a crime that shocked the sports world. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot more interesting videos on the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Thank you very much.